Back in England after the first trip to Israel, I was really still curious. So what is it that I saw at the Western Wall that intrigued me so much? I was a big fan of Tolkien. Sitting on my bedside table was this book, The Hobbit. Actually, it was sitting on top of The Lord of the Rings, because by that time I was working my way through the entire trilogy plus The Hobbit. I went to the library and I was searching for books about the Holocaust and about Judaism. What I landed on was The Chosen. It didn't take too long before I had The Hobbit and The Chosen piled up, followed by The Promise, followed by My Name is Asher Lev. And there they were, all piled up on my bedside table. And to this day, they sit on this bookshelf behind me. As I dove into the world of Danny and Ruvain in The Chosen, I met two young men of about my age, in their teenage years, who were grappling with religion. More conservative, less conservative. What do you do about breaking the rules? Do you break the rules? I don't know if that was what attracted me to them, or whether they were in some way an answer to my question about the Western Wall and all of those traditions, and they were encapsulated in these two young men and their friends in New York in the 1960s. I don't know what drew me to them, but I devoured their stories and their lives. I've recently looked at these books. They're packed with Hebraisms and Yiddishisms and you name it. I have no idea, as a 13-year-old or 14-year-old by then, British kid in a coal mining village, I managed to navigate their world and their language and their lingo, but I felt like I was in their world. I left school as fast as my legs could carry me. In England at the time, you could leave school at 16. I don't think it was 16 in one day, but certainly 16 in a couple of months. I was out of high school and I was intent on being a farmer. I loved the open air. I loved the idea of agriculture. My friend Chris had taught me to drive a tractor at 14. He was a farm manager and he let me loose on the farm, and I just loved every minute of it. And I just thought, okay, great. I'm going to be one day an arable farmer. I'm going to have thousands of acres, and I'm going to be doing all these things. And one day on my tractor, I realized two things. One, oh no, my younger brother is going to medical school, and I am not even considering going to university. Two, I have absolutely no idea what I would study if I went to university. Anyway, I did night school, finished and graduated high school so that I could do a correspondence course. Now, listen up, everybody listening to this who doesn't remember pre-computers. Correspondence course meant I wrote essays, put them in an envelope, licked the envelope, put a stamp on it, and sent it to my tutor. And I did a correspondence course in theology in order to put together the continuum of the Jewish and then Jewish and Christian traditions to try and figure out, so what is it about these traditions, where they come from, why they separated, what they became after they separated, and where are they now? That was my grand plan. And doing it by correspondence meant that I could keep working. And by and by, I moved from farming into business and ended up running a coffee shop. In the coffee shop, it wasn't long before we discovered we were rather good at confectionery. Sooner or later, we ended up with a confectionery factory in which we made little tiny cakes that said, "Happy birthday, I love you, Mom, get well soon," or whatever. And that was how I was occupying my time. The more I studied and the more I learned, the more I realized that this division between Judaism and Christianity left Jews in an extremely bad place as Christians grew in strength, ultimately institutionalized, ultimately became the political hegemony of Europe, and Jews remained a minority in Christian Europe. In diaspora, after the destruction of the said temple where I had visited and seen the remains of the wall. It just didn't make any sense to me. I have to be honest with you. I was growing up in a Christian environment, which was, I don't know if it was philo-Semitic, but it was certainly not anti-Semitic, and a deep appreciation of the Jewish world and the Jewish traditions. When we went to Israel on that trip, I didn't feel I was even on a Christian trip. I felt my parents were exploring all of that heritage, as if all of that heritage, the Jewish and Christian heritage, was all mine to explore. It didn't even occur to me that they were separate things. So I was in this environment in which I had an appreciation of the long arc of history, and yet it was very clear that once Christianity gets on the scene and becomes powerful, Jews not only become less powerful, but become persecuted century after century after century. The more I learned, I guess the more angry I became. I was certainly angry for a while, but also the more curious I became to try and understand, so why did that happen? And what does it mean that it happened? That Jews became victims of Christians, so-called Christianity, where the values of to be a Christian means to be a good person, upholds good values. And yet, century after century, all I could see is that good Christian people did really evil things towards Jewish people who had not asked for it. Obviously, my academic study took me much deeper into the origins and the theology and the doctrines and the politics and theories of all of that. But 10 years after my first visit to Israel in 1991, in my final year of doing my undergraduate degree, I suddenly realized, oh no, I think this might be a calling. I think I need to spend my life understanding, how did that happen? How is it possible that Christian people could persecute Jews and that Jews would suffer anti-Semitism for centuries in Christian Europe? I need to do a PhD. Now, the thing about doing a correspondence course in the 80s, I guess, into the early 90s, was that the main goal was to pass, not to pass with honors so that you could go on to do a research degree. And in my final year, I realized not only do I need to pass this degree, I need to pass with honors because I want to do a PhD in the area to understand more deeply, where did this come from? And so I decided I wanted to go back to Israel, to the Vidal Sassoon Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism, to see if I could do my research there. And so I was packing my bags again in the summer of 1991 to head back to Israel.